tough getting this group together. It was tough getting Lance up the stairs. Did you guys notice he tripped coming up the stairs? So for those of you that have not been here many times, the Airport Directors Forum is an opportunity for airport directors, one, to tell you what's working, but to also tell you from their perspective what's not working and what they're doing about it, right? So with this particular session, we're gonna push the envelope a little bit. We have some questions that we've talked about. We're gonna push the envelope a little bit because these are brilliant minds, and I know they're prepared. But before I do that, I just want to say something amazing about each one of them. I'm not going to introduce them because that's been done already. But Charlene, right here to my left, who used to be with Phoenix, she's now with John Wayne. She is the newest airport director of the family, and we are so proud of her. We're so very proud of her. Lance Little, who is, I don't know, we compete on a whole lot of levels. We do. We compete for wives. We compete for a whole lot of stuff. But Lance, who is the CEO, general manager, grand poobah, he has a lot of titles of Seattle Tacoma Airport, is just an amazing leader. He's just kicking tail in the industry. He's also very active in other trade organizations, and so we're excited to have him on. To his left, I'm going to say it before he says it. So we call him B. So B is the general manager of the, I'm sorry, Chicago, of the busiest airport in the world. I just wanted to say it before he said it, because trust me, it was going to come out. And to his left is my dear friend, amazing, she's a superstar in the industry, Jamie Rhee. You heard from her earlier. She's the head of the Chicago Department of Aviation, including O'Hare and Midway Airport. And the spirit that you're seeing right here with this conference is the same spirit that you see when she's dealing with issues related to aviation. And so we just love her to death. To her left is John Clark. I want to call him the dean. John's been the head of a couple airports, Indianapolis, was it Miami? Jacksonville, and so we look at John. He was former chair of AMAC, for example, former chair of ACI, and so he's been around for a while, and a lot of good things that happen in this industry are because of John Clark, and so that's why I call him the dean. Maybe that'll stick. And to his left, certainly not least, but he is the newest in the industry. I can't call him a baby though. Because he's been a powerhouse in transportation for so long, you can never call him a baby, but he is new to this industry, but he has already began to make a major impact. And that's my good friend Phil, who is the head of Denver International Airport. He came in, so I have this one quick story about Phil, then I get to the question. So Phil, when he was the head of LAX Airport, because I have the mic, so I can do this a little bit. When he was the head of LA Transit, he made this, he launched this initiative where he was going to move the transit system to free transit. So you pay $0 to get on the transit. And that sent waves throughout the industry. I've talked to you about this, Phil, so I'm not telling you. So that sent waves throughout the industry. And so then it was announced that he was going to take over Denver International Airport. And so I said to Phil, I said, brother, please don't make an announcement that you're going to go to 0 PFCs, because that won't work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, I have a round of questions. And so my first question, and you all can decide which order you want to go in. So my first question is, if I can find it, tell me a little bit about just knowing the challenges in this industry. And this is on the personnel side. Give me an example of what you've done that might stand out to position, to support, to promote women and minorities in your respective organizations. And so why don't we start with the smartest one of you?
Smartest one.
Why don't we start with you, Phil?
Well, first of all, thank you, Ricky, and I'm really humbled to be on this panel with such legends in transportation and aviation. And I do want to say I was really inspired by the guest speaker. Really inspired by her. There's a number of things that we've done to promote women in aviation and women-owned businesses, minority businesses, and I'll just talk about one, and that is what I call operationalizing equity. Because when I think about our role here as CEOs, we are the implementers. We're the implementers. And if we don't implement, it does not get done. And so operationalizing equity, in my mind, is putting equity in all of our procurement documents. One of the things that I did was stop all panels that were evaluating projects until they were trained on equity and until we had diverse evaluation panels. And I think that is very, very important because we talk about diversity, we talk about equity. I want to implement equity and operationalize equity, and I think we are the ones to do that as CEOs in our organizations.
Okay. I'm going to give you two, and I am truly humbled to be sitting up here because I haven't been an airport CEO in quite a while. But having said that, I'm going to give you two things. One, when I was an airport CEO, there was a large contract opportunity in Indianapolis to expand the FedEx facility. Under normal circumstances, the procurement process would truly go after the largest companies that could absorb the greatest risk. I had a conversation with FedEx, and I suggested that this was an opportunity to have a minority company be the prime. And if both FedEx and the airport could agree upon that, we could set up a procurement process that would allow that to happen. And so I heard earlier from our keynote speaker, you got to be purposed about things. If you really want them to happen, you have to be purposed about it. As now a non-airport person in the corporate world, again, you have to be purposed about it. And those purposes are not only through our joint venture partners, but reaching out to small businesses as a large company and putting your arms around them. So if that means helping them understand financial systems, HR processes, how to take that small business and begin to get scale. So there's things that we do as a company at SSP that they're not even our business partners, but we reach out to make sure that they have that opportunity using our resources to help.
Great, thank you. Again, I am just thrilled to be up here with you guys. Thank you so much. This is, I like to say I've been kicked out of every department in the city at least once. You've heard me say that. Aviation, this is my third time back, so what a treat to be, actually, I started my first job in aviation early in 90s, and then spent some time as general counsel, and then back since 2018. But I spent 10 years in procurement, which you can tell the mayor is very passionate about, as am I, because it is a procurement tool that you're able to do the things, and you got to be, and we keep saying it's with intentionality. You have to write the specs the way that you want the not only the product delivered or the something, whatever it is, built, but you have to do it in a way that is through the lens of equity, like my mayor likes to say. But one of the things that I'm most proud of is it's sitting on your table. Everyone has them right now. And those are coloring books. Something so simple, a coloring book. But to start kids, very young age, to be the next and future leaders of our airports and our industries. We distribute these throughout our schools in Chicago, at our libraries. I want little kids asking their parents, what's the difference between a concourse and the tarmac? You've won if you get a 10-year-old asking that question. You've won. I remember I've heard so many people speak, and it is really by happenstance that a lot of us are here. I got into aviation because it was really the only job that I could apply for at the time back in the 90s, but I got it in my blood. But you hear people say it was that one person that told me to go do this or apply, or why are not you like languages, why don't you do this, or you like to travel, or you're interested in these things. We have to spark that development in the future generation, because those are the ones that, like you say, and I think that what Phil said is, making folks that are evaluating proposals to take diversity training, that is brilliant. Because if you don't have that, again, I'll say it, the lens of equity in everything that you do with intentionality, you're going to miss the mark. And I was truly inspired today by the speaker. She was just amazing.
So I obviously love airport CEOs, and we all went to airport CEO school. One of the things that they teach you in airport CEO school is that regardless of the question that is asked to you, you answer the question you want to answer. and they are very skillful at doing that. And so, so Dr. B graduated at the top of the class, so let's see how he does.
So I want to break it down into two areas, right? Internally, equity and inclusion internally, what it means to us. So my mayor called me up, or I had a conversation with my mayor a few weeks ago, and he said, B, I heard that you're causing quite a buzz in the city of Atlanta. I said, Mayor, I don't only want to cause a buzz in the city of Atlanta. I want us to cause a buzz at the national level when it comes to equity and inclusion. And so I like to demonstrate my speeches with pictures, because pictures tells us 1,000 words, right? And so we have some of these magazines out there. This is what my inclusion and equity look like in the city of Atlanta, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. We do have some of these magazines out there if you're interested in having one of them. And I put in place a senior executive to oversee our diversity, equity, and inclusion program. She's back here somewhere. Elise and Dorita, are you guys back here? Stand so people could mob you later on. There they are. And the second point I want to make is economic equity, or economic opportunity for female and minority business. We have put together in place a signature outreach program talking about education, training, technical assistance, and everything else that goes together with that. And lastly, because I want to keep that very high, is we in this room, we sitting here, have to continue the discussion at the federal level, at the national level, just not locally. My Senator Ossoff, and one of my congresspersons, Representative Johnson, just introduced a bill in Congress, and I fully endorse them. And my name is on the press release they put out there, endorsing what they're doing to give minority, female and minority business a better opportunity in terms of equity in the bill that was just passed, the $1 trillion bill, to have more inclusion, DB inclusion at the federal level. Got to continue this at the national level.
Can someone grab my magazine for me, please, right there? Anyway, so similar to be two things. What we did on the inside in terms of promoting our staff internally is very similar to what Phil said. So we realized when we looked at the organization, it really was the same elk that was being promoted. There was really no diversity. And so we did the very same thing. So every panel for hiring or promoting or even doing evaluations for contract has to be a diverse panel. Has to have race, gender, age, ethnicity, diversity on the panel. Also, it is mandatory you have to do unconscious bias training before you can serve on any of those panels. The other thing that we did is to ensure that the people on the panel are actually peers or as close to peers as possible. Because there are some panels where you'd have a manager and then you have 2 or 3 subordinates or 2 levels below a subordinate. It's that manager that's going to determine who is hired or which contract. So peers are what's on the panel. So that's what we did internally, and you can actually see the results. Is Dawn in the room? Dawn Hunter? I don't know if she's in the room, probably busy, but a lot of people say, hey, Lance, that was a great hire. You hired Dawn. But I really can't take the credit for hiring Dawn per se. What I take the credit for is creating that environment, the policies and practices that actually resulted in Dawn being hired because it leveled the playing field. That's how she was hired. I did not pick her, right? So that's what we did on the inside. Now, to promote and get folks from the outside, there was this huge barrier. It still is. There's a law in Washington State called I-200. And I-200 actually curtails any form of, you really can't have set aside, you can't set DBE goals. Really, it curtails any form of affirmative action. That's in the state of Washington, if you can believe that. And so every time when I look at the numbers, that's the excuse, we can't do stuff because there's I-200. So one of the most significant things that we did was we actually created a position, a grants manager, which is a position we had at Hartsfield, Jackson, we had it at Houston. And the purpose of that grant manager is to go after AIP funding. That's his total job. That's what he does. And then we apply those grants to projects, and now we can actually set DBE goals irrespective of any state law. And that has been tremendously successful. So that's what we have done on the DBE side. On the ACDBE side, if you look at our packages, we have packages structured. We have RFPs, right? But in addition to RFPs, we have what's called CEPs, right? Which is competitive evaluation process. You guys know we're in the concessions business. RFPs are very expensive. For you to put together RFP to go after, it's very expensive. The CEP is actually far less onerous, right? And it's less expensive to do it. And we have that to go after smaller packages. So if you're a small business, you don't want to partner with a large business or be a subcontractor, you can actually do a CEP and go after one of those single units or just 2 units in a package. So that's what we have done. In addition to that, we have a kiosk program. Right? So if you're a very, very small business, you can't even do a CEP. You don't know anything about running airports. Somebody said if you're coming into airport business now, you might fail. You can participate as part of our introductory kiosk program where we actually make the investment in the kiosk and you just bring your product in the airport and learn how the airport operates. And then you can graduate to what we call an intermediate kiosk, which is the next phase where now you can make some investment and decide if you want to stay in the airport business. So those are some of the specific things that we do to promote equity, diversity, and inclusion.
I just want you to know Lance looked me in the face as if he answered the question I asked him.
I don't want to be accused of being a politician. So. Yeah.
So for me, when you talk about diversity and inclusion in my role as a leader, it's about what does it look like in practice? Too often, we have folks talk about it, put up flyers, and nothing happens. What does it look like in practice? And so for me, am I mentoring people? Am I truly mentoring them? Am I sponsoring people? Am I picking up the phone and promoting that person to others so they can climb the ladder? For things that I can control, is it truly diverse and inclusive? When I went to Phoenix and started working at the airport, I had an opportunity to create the Contracts and Services Division. I went to the airport as the only minority manager. And when I looked at it, I said to myself, I'm going to show them what diversity looks like. So when I created my department, it was 60% diverse. So don't tell me you can't find quality people of diversity, because I set the example. So as a leader, people are watching what you do. Lip service is lip service, but if you show it and you practice it, then others within the organization will emulate what you do. So again, it's all about not what you say, but what it looks like in practice?
So I'm going to try something a little different. I'm going to ask a question that you guys will pretend to answer. Let's try this. So actually, I'm going to go to my third question, all right, instead of the second one. So the third, so if you were here for the business meeting, we talked about this idea of creating a paradigm shift in how we think. Instead of fighting and being obsessed over a slice of the pie, ACDB program, DBE program, MBE program, ABC, all these programs, right? Instead of being one fighting over a slice, that we recognize that we own the whole damn pie, right? But that's a mindset that has to change, right? Some of us are going to talk about this a little bit later. So in that context, how do you view your role as an agent in this effort to redefine aviation opportunities for women and minorities? So how do you view yourself as an agent? Not what's in your magazine in the back, or not. Look, B knew we were going to take shots at him when he came here with his magazine, so he knew that was coming. But how do you see yourself as an agent? Not your organization, not your mentor, but you. How do you see yourself as an agent in terms of creating a redefinition of aviation opportunities for women and men in this industry?
You want me? I'll go ahead and take that.
Okay.
I think, first of all, redefining its messaging, what I see is sometimes it's the mindset if someone else, if minorities are starting to win, then some segment of the population feels like, then I'm losing, right? We're all in this together. And because I'm winning does not mean that you're losing, right? I'm looking for opportunities, the same opportunities that you had. And so how do we have a conversation about true equity, access to capital? Because when we all move, it creates, right, a better experience for our guests at the airport. That is our focus of creating the best space for our guests at the airport. Those should be the winners. There should be no winners and losers. We should be doing everything possible to enhance the guest experience. And whoever puts forth that effort, right, whether or not it's women, it's minorities, that should be our primary focus. However, we all should have a place at the table. And because I come forth and I'm a minority, I'm a female, and I've just won a contract, it's not taking anything away from you because we all should have a space in this ecosystem.
So, Ricky, to be that agent, I think what you had said earlier about starting by leading by example, I agree with that wholeheartedly, and that's where I would start, where if my team is not diverse, then how can I be preaching equity, diversity, and inclusion if mine isn't? So I think it starts with each of us. If you look at the direct reports, as B showed in his magazine, which I'll bring a magazine next time, right? You have, no, seriously, you have to start there. You have to lead by example because it's going to trickle down throughout the organization itself. So that's one. The other area I think that we have to play a role as agent is we have to be, as airport directors, have to be able to convince the decision makers, the key decision makers, whether it's our commissioners, it's the congressional delegation, or city council members, all the key decision makers of the importance of equity, diversity, and inclusion. We also have to educate them on the consequences of certain decisions that are being made, whether it's policy decisions or initiatives, right, that are well-intended, right, for example, labor harmony agreement, PLAs, and how those decisions and policy actually impact small businesses and minority and women-owned businesses and actually form these barriers for entry into the business. I think that's the role that we have to play. The other role, the third one I'd say, is even though the question is about the individual, Ricky, I think there is a collective also, right? There are certain things that we will not accomplish unless we function as a collective and we have consensus. One of the discussions we've been having recently is about, for example, the PFC and whether PFC's DBE goals should be associated with it. If you listen to the two speakers earlier, or a keynote speaker and the mayor, and they talk about economic wealth, right? That's the higher moral purpose that we have. And we really need to understand what we do and separate it from why we do it. What we do is run airports, safe, efficient, customer service, etc. Why we do it is even more important, right? It's for economic wealth and value. And if we, for example, get a PFC increase and we do not have that why, right, we are not able to continue to provide economic wealth, in particular for women and minority-owned companies, then it's all for naught, right? And we have to do that as a collective change agent. That cannot be done as an individual.
So how I redefine or define as a leader of the organization, well, as the leader of the world's busiest and most efficient airport. I just want to throw that out there, Miss Ree. She's been giving me hell all week long since I came here, so I got to throw that out. You really have to walk the talk, okay? We are talking and we're talking and we're talking. You got to walk the talk right now. To Shanda, talk about bragging. You got to be bold and you got to brag sometime. The other week I was at the Metro Atlanta Chamber and I was addressing about 50 CEOs sitting in the room. And I looked across the room. I said, this is over $1 trillion sitting in this room out here. I want to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some of my staff member, Walter, Myrna, I think you were with me, right? And I laid it out, and I said, look at Atlanta performance, look at Atlanta airport performance, and I challenge you to take a strong inner look at your own company. Atlanta Airport, in 6 years, we paid $2.2 billion in construction invoice. Forget about the concession and the service contract for a minute. $2.2 billion in 6 years in construction invoice, of which $1.8 billion was eligible for participation. And of that $1.8 billion, we pay $607 million to female and minority business. I said, if that's not success, I challenge each and every one of you to show me what is success. So you got to define, you got to set the up tempo, and you got to lead the way. And then you measure your performance, and you just spread that performance. You just go out there and communicate your performance, your successful performance. And when I finished addressing that crowd over there, was a lot of nodding, a lot of inner search, and said, what can we do to match or beat Atlanta Airport in the city of Atlanta? So again, walk the talk, have your performance in place, and communicate or broadcast or marketing your performance success.
So I've always viewed my job, whether I was the chief procurement officer or the commissioner in leadership, as removing barriers. And it's barriers for everybody. What is preventing you from succeeding in your job, from getting that contract, from getting the financing, from being able to pay your bills, from being able to advance? And so what I really am very gracious, have so much gratitude for is the staff that I have surrounded myself with are just absolutely amazing people. CDA, we've all devoted ourselves to looking out and around, and we say, why are things this way? Why is it causing it to be this way? And a lot of old policies are ingrained in government. Things that are buried in those specifications that you just overlooked for so many years. And what you're not understanding is the unintended consequence of what these words mean in the bids. And so removing those barriers, and I will just tell one story. When I was the chief procurement officer for the city, someone had come to me and said, there's a bid out that's pre-qualifying, I think it was road design or bridges or something like that. This is 15 years ago. And they said, there's just no way we could ever get it. And I said, why? And they said, well, buried in this, 100 pages of specs, it says that you had to have worked in a city the size of Chicago in order to pre-qualify. And I said, what? So that would be New York and LA. That would be it. So if you have not worked there, you are not eligible. But no one ever had focused on that one sentence. And it was the same people that were getting the contracts. And so just by removing that one barrier, we were able to then start pools that were opening up to minority, women-owned businesses. We are very blessed here. Lance, I really sympathize with you because we have got really progressive programs here. Race, gender neutral programs that we came up with. There's 16 different incentives. We do target market. We solicit directly to our minority and women-owned businesses as primes. We have flipped in the last 3 years with the help of my staff, who are all sitting right here. They're amazing people. We have flipped at least 6 different contracts: property management services, custodial services, unarmed security, QA, quality assurance materials testing. We have flipped those from being bid to the general public to now just being bid to minority and women-owned businesses. So at the top of those are primes on every one of those opportunities. We also have a lot of, thank you, that's a lot of work. Again, I had the pleasure of working in procurement for so many years where I got to develop a lot of these programs. I always said that they kicked me out of procurement so I wouldn't come up with any more incentives, because we really incentivized, like the mayor said, all the way down to employment in socioeconomically disadvantaged areas. We will give points on your evaluation for hiring from the communities, returning citizens, CPS sponsoring them into the unions, our minority and women-owned business, our city residents. We will incentivize everything because we know what we want to see as the outcome. But I'll just say it again, I couldn't do it without my staff because I surround myself with very smart people. Come up with the idea and they implement.
So as the agent you referenced.
Thank you, John.
Yeah. I think you have to have a sense of courage. And that courage comes from the ability to go and do what you believe is the right thing. I have led 2 organizations, and at the leadership and throughout those organizations, not because we set goals and made public announcements that we had to have diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it was, once again, by purpose and by design. And it proved that you could have a very diverse organization and truly perform. Because when you, and it's not just about race and gender, it's a diversity and inclusion of thought. And when you invite different thought into that organization, it is really amazing the level of creativity and ability that you actually produced in that environment. And so, my experience has been, it's really not about setting goals. It's about recognizing that through the diversity and the equity and an inclusion, what you're really doing is building a really powerful ecosystem. And when I think about like the airport environment being the ecosystem and the different components, there has to be more conversation in that local environment about how this all works together. Because from the airport standpoint, being a public entity, there's this big public policy over you. And then you have these private interests. Somehow you gotta bring those all together to say, inclusively, this is what we're going to create. And this is why. Because as a result, the community is stronger, the airport is stronger, and it's just such a better system for all. So I go back to what was said earlier. You gotta first start with your own team and have them be empowered and understand the strength in that diversity. If you don't address the procurement policies and you are trying to bring in equity and inclusion, it just doesn't work. And that's why I say you gotta be bold. You gotta have some courage and say, I'm gonna go against the grain. Last thing I'll say, the one thing that I missed in that whole experience was sustainability. And I'm not talking about environmental sustainability. I'm telling you, those organizations that were created, after the departure of the leadership, it returned back to the cocoon that was started. It was when I got there, right? So somehow in that mix, there has to be a way to say, as that agent, when you go away, how does it actually get sustained? And that's why I say somehow you got to include the broader community, the broader ecosystem. So no matter what the policy is overriding, that system really appreciates the diversity and the inclusion.
So let me see if I remember your question. No, I remember it. I see myself personally as a change agent in this effort, going back to my growing up on the south side of this city, in public housing with a single mother working 14 hours a day. And when I went to apply for a job in the infrastructure space in my community to help build my own community, I was told that there were no jobs there, or I was not trained. So I personalized this crusade. I personalize it for minority businesses. I personalize it for people of color and women trying to get a job or applying for a job. I have tried to evaluate potential, which may not show up in the resume, because the resume may be short on experience. And I think that we have a small window here when we talk about equity in this country now. I don't remember equity being talked about and tied to a $1.2 trillion bill, not in my lifetime. And so we have a small window, and I see myself as an agent of that. I think the other piece is we have to have the ability, and I think we all do, to be able to make our argument around this issue as an economic development issue. As an economic development issue, and most of these ideas, and when you talk about the executive order on equity and underserved communities and Justice 40 and all those things are silent on what constitutes investment in underserved communities. And they are silent by design to allow for creativity by us and by people in this room. So I think we have an opportunity to say that, look, we need a national certification database for minority businesses. We have the ability to say that the personal net worth for minority businesses should be increased. We have that ability from our respective foxholes, right? Because we are the implementers. We're in the seat now. And so I've personalized this issue, and what I've tried to do as a change agent is articulate it in such a way that, one, it's undeniable, and two, whoever I'm talking to feels like, why in the hell didn't I do this before, right? And so I think we can do that as a group. We can do that as CEOs. We can do that. The problems or the challenges that we have with minority businesses and minority hiring, we can provide those solutions at the local level, because it ain't coming down from on high at the federal level. They've given us the money. It's up to us to implement.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap. I had the great pleasure of asking each panelist 2 questions, and you got the great pleasure of getting 7 answers from each one of them. So that's the most efficient use of time that I've experienced in a very long time. But I'm getting messages here that we were supposed to wrap up at 2:45, but at 2:45 we were in the middle of John Clark. And so we couldn't stop that. But are these guys amazing or what? Let's give them a round of applause. These are some of the best minds in the business, regardless of race and gender. And so you should rest well that the future of this industry, the state of this industry, is in the hands of people like this. Because I rest well because I love these guys to death. I trust them. I know them very well, and I know they're very capable at what they do. And minority business participation, elevating minorities in this space, just happens to be a passion of theirs. It doesn't define them because they're excellent aviation managers. And again, you should feel very good about having these leaders in your industry space. So again, enjoy the rest of the conference. I think we're throwing the schedule off a little bit. I hope you enjoyed the lunch. We had an amazing speaker with DeSandra. I don't know if she's still here. An amazing message, and I'm going to call it a landing. Thank you.